Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome to our February edition of the Victor Central School District Town Hall. I'm Tim Terranova, the proud superintendent of the Victor Central School District. Have some special guests joining me tonight as we talk about the newly developed 5-year Victor Central School District strategic plan. Joining me are Karen Finter, who is our Director of Math and Science. Karen's here today. Andy Folks, who is a parent of graduates as well as a current senior at Victor Senior High, and student Kira Donnelly, at least a student for a few more months. She's one of our outstanding seniors, class of 2022. So again, the first part of tonight, most of tonight, we're going to spend just talking a little bit about the strategic plan. We're going to share a PowerPoint. I know, don't get nervous when you hear the word PowerPoint. We're not going to just bore you to death over the next hour, but we do have some important information we want to share with you. It's actually a very similar PowerPoint to the one we shared out at the Board of Education last week, but we wanted to make sure that we also shared it in this venue as well. So we'll do that. The group is going to kind of share some of the important points. It's a brief PowerPoint, and then I'll ask the group some questions just about the process of developing the strategic plan. So I'm going to share my screen. Hopefully you can all see that. Mrs. Finter, give me a thumbs up if you can. Excellent. And so let me just go over a couple real brief areas of focus. So how is the plan developed? You probably heard me say in the past that one of the most important things I heard in my entry plan meetings when I took over as superintendent in February of 2020 was that the district really needed a strategic plan. They needed a strong focus where we bring in the community to help develop those focus areas and then have a shared emphasis on those focus areas that we can really aspire to obtain. So a strategic plan development, it was something that was heard loud and clear in those entry plan meetings. And then the Board of Education tasked me as the superintendent to develop that strategic plan. So what we did was, of course, COVID hit right around that time. So we had to deal with that for a little bit. But last spring, as we dealt with COVID, we also brought in two facilitators from the University of Rochester, Dr. Lynn Ertl and Mr. Bob McKevney. Both are retired superintendents from the area. They do consultant work with the University of Rochester and has helped many districts create strategic plans over time. So they were brought in with really strong recommendations. And then they started to use there's really two aspects to it, the plan. One is to gather as much data as possible from the school community about the strengths and areas of focus that are needed at Victor. And then it's to take all that information, synthesize it down into a strategic plan. So in terms of gathering data, we did both quantitative and qualitative information. The facilitators examined significant amounts of materials from the district, whether it was curriculum work, whether it was student achievement, comparison and benchmark districts. But probably the most important things that they did was to talk to people. And so one, they used the interview and focus group methods where they brought in hundreds of people and talked to them about what makes Victor tick, what's the strengths of the district, what are areas they want to really look at, what do they think is most important in a child's education. And they also we had over 1,000 people fill out a district-wide survey to also add information to that. So this took a few months to do in itself, just to gather all this information. And then over 4 full days, a committee that Kira is going to talk about in a second was formed of over approximately 36 people. They took all that information, culled it into a rough draft of a strategic plan, and then a subcommittee from the strategic planning committee really worked on revising that rough draft, getting more input from the committee to ultimately then create the strategic plan that about 3 weeks ago we unveiled to our staff and now are unveiling it to our community. So it was a significant amount of work, started really in the summer of 2021 and went all the way to January of 2022. And now it's our job to really articulate the plan and make it come alive and make it really a living document for the district so that we can all support what is really the emphasis points of that plan. So that's the major areas process in terms of how we did it. I'm going to turn it over to Kiera, who's going to talk a little bit about the committee.
Thank you so much, Dr. Terranova, and thank you for having me tonight. As Dr. Terranova said, I am a student and a senior at Victor Senior High School, and I was not only a participant in the qualitative data as an interview subject, but I also was a part of the strategic planning committee. One of the things that was so great, as you can see, and the planning committee participants, is that we have a mixture of staff, our superintendent, members of the Board of Education, parents, and students. So we have a vast array of perspectives, which I think is what makes this plan so great. I speak on behalf of all of the other students when I say that we really got to have a strong input, and it wasn't as though we were unequal or treated less than just because of our age. Everyone was valued in these meetings, which is what I think is so great. So not only was there that diverse perspective, but it was a communal agreement on what we wanted to accomplish and how we reached our goals. That's what I think was so great about being a part of this committee and having all of those diverse perspectives unified over bettering not only Victor schools, but bettering the community as well.
You want to take this slide too, Kiera?
Yes, sorry about that. So we also segmented our ideas into 3 pillars: culture, learning and instruction, and student supports and opportunities. I personally was a part of the culture aspect, and I worked on student wellness. We all split into 3 groups. Those 3 groups worked diligently over the several days, long hours, lots of notepads, note-taking, conferencing with the developers, with each other, the other groups to come together. And as you can see listed, we have what is essentially a summary of all of those days of hard work and breaking down every minuscule piece of qualitative and quantitative data. The culture is creating an inclusive community, whether that is about diversity, socioeconomic status, sexuality, gender, all of those things. Learning and instruction is helping develop a structured learning environment for both students and faculty, where we create a community that is focused on learning and not only bettering the learning experience for students, but helping the faculty and staff create a positive environment for themselves. As we saw during the COVID-19 pandemic, there were a lot of struggles with our staff, feeling as though they weren't getting the support that they needed. And we definitely talked about that a lot in our strategic planning committee meetings, which I thought was important because teachers are just as a huge member of this community as our superintendent, as our administration, and as our students and parents. And next is the student support and opportunities. We talked a lot about clubs, a lot about making sure our guidance counselors and social workers were actively participating in the school environment, and then what new support systems do we need to implement for our diverse student body. So as it says in the beginning of that bullet, maximize student support, which I think is huge because although it's something that people assume goes overlooked, it's not, and it's something the district is really trying to manage and emphasize. And I think that was something that was really important that the strategic planning committee did, was say, we know that our students need more support. We are acknowledging that, and we are going to make that happen. So I think that that's really important to know that Victor cares about its students, Victor cares about its parents, Victor cares about its administration, Victor cares about its students, and Victor cares about bettering the community. So those are three ways that we organized our goals, but overall the goal is bettering the district as a whole and the community as well. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Kiera.
So one of those pillars that Kiera so eloquently talked about it is culture, and culture is one of the largest sections of the strategic plan. It really nestled within it is not just the day-to-day inner workings of our school culture, but it's also working together to understand and appreciate all types of cultures that our families across the district represent. So it really starts with that goal of creating a welcoming, safe, and inclusive community where all members are valued and the wellness of individuals is at the forefront. And as Kiera mentioned, it really is that idea of inclusivity. And so thinking about the subtopics within that goal, establishing mission, vision, and values for the district that will really guide and launch all of the work to come. Thinking about staff, how do we attract and retain highly competent, highly qualified educators and professionals in support of students? How do we create that environment where they are supported and can grow? How are we really being good stewards of our resources and budgeting with the needs of all stakeholders in mind, operating our facilities and planning ahead for our facility use to keep up with the growth, but also to maximize the student experience? Things like safety and developing our safety plans, our technology plan that see us not just in the short term, but really launch us into a longer term as well. Consistency and continuity was a large topic as well within culture. Really thinking about how our physical spaces are organized, how our buildings are organized, how our transitions are supported for students as they go from one building to the next and kind of go through those developmental milestones. Are we using best practice? Are we getting stakeholder input to do that? And so the plan really helps to make space for these conversations and for putting the right people in the room to have conversations about it and to use a lot of data to help guide that work. Subtopic E under culture is diversity, equity, and inclusion. Looking at our community, how are we meeting the needs? How are we being transparent in our communication? How do we use culturally affirming practices within our instruction and really support inclusive opportunities and our diverse populations across the district? How are we looking at things like equity and really making equity at the forefront of our decisions? And then finally, under culture is our communication. How are we really leveraging our systems of communication to enlist our families, enlist our stakeholders, both internally and externally, using resources like tonight, for instance. So culture is a big pillar. There's lots of parts to it. When you look at the finalized plan, each component of the plan, those three pillars, have subtopics underneath them. And so this is just a peek at the mission, vision, and values subcomponent. Under that subcomponent, there are tasks, and we've identified when that work will begin. And we've tried to arrange the plan so that you can kind of see sort of that year-to-year progression of the work. As we'll talk about a little later on, you'll see how the year one tasks will be pulled out and become part of that annual playbook, the management plan of this strategic plan to really guide that work. But this is just one way to kind of think about how that plan is organized when it finally is posted. The other pillar that I'm going to be able to talk about tonight is one near and dear to my heart, certainly learning and instruction, right? It's all of the pieces that go into place to make learning and growing really at the heart of what we do. So the goal of this committee, of this strategic plan rather, was to really look at our processes and our systems that will help impact all students' academic success. So looking at our curriculum and instruction practices, having conversations and developing plans around assessment and analyzing our current curriculum. Where do we have gaps? Where do we have needs? How do we really create a guaranteed and viable curriculum, one that all children will benefit from, K-12 or pre-K-12? How are we using data to drive our curriculum? And what are the processes that we use to develop it, to really start to hone in on some of those systems around curriculum and instruction? You can't have great instruction in the classroom without supporting teachers with ongoing professional learning. Beyond just a mandated professional learning plan, really looking forward to use data to inform how teachers are learning and growing their craft. How do we use systems within our district, stakeholder voice, to help develop what is a comprehensive professional development continuum? And what do we define in Victor as student achievement? We could use single metrics like achievement, graduation rate, but really there's a whole comprehensive way to really measure and take pride in all of the wonderful achievements of our students. And so how do we as a district work together to define that? So that's the learning and instruction pillar. Again, snapshot of the plan so you can kind of see the organization of it. We are in the process now of identifying the key person responsible for these subtopics and then the facilitators for each of the tasks. And so there is accountability built into the plan.
All right, I'm going to go through the third pillar having to do with student supports and opportunities. When we talk about this, you know, it was already mentioned that we want to maximize the student supports and opportunities. And that's broken down really into three sections. The first is special education, recognizing as a district that, you know, this is a population that we really need to pay attention to and support so that they can reach whatever potential they want to reach. And it may be college, it may be high school graduation, it may be an internship, things of that nature. The student services, that's another key part of it. It is a lot of different things at the academic intervention services, the building configuration and spacing. As you can tell, the district is growing. English language learners, the related services, the RTI, the responses to intervention, and the multi-tiered systems of support. And then also the social and emotional learning of both the students and the staff is obviously that's very important, especially during this time when we're all dealing with COVID. And then other supports and services. And one of the things that I was very pleased with was to see that, you know, when you talk about student supports and opportunities, sometimes we think about those students that may need a little bit of extra help. But it also takes into account the fact that there are students in our district that are in an accelerated program. And we also want to focus on those students and their needs as, you know, they may take a different, you know, road down to wherever their career may lead them. And then the classroom supports, you know, everything from staffing to materials, you know, taking a look at all of that and seeing what exactly our needs are. Next slide, please. This again, one picture, snapshot. And one of the things that I talked to the team about and definitely shared at the Board of Education meeting, you know, as a parent that was involved with this process, one of the things that I was very happy to see is that under special education, where we're creating a vision to identify processes and supports to promote student growth and achievement. As a parent, I was very pleased to see that on this page, everything that's tasked on here is tasked to begin in year one. And I think that really shows the commitment and the dedication of the district in recognizing that this is a key area of opportunity where we can really help this population. So I was very pleased to see that. And I think that that really does go to show the dedication of everybody that works here at the district. You know, when we talk about putting all of this together, you know, you want to work to create and establish like a big picture vision of where the district wants to go. And this process of the strategic plan is really going to help the district to do, you know, put together those systems that are needed to take care of the individual tasks as well as provide the big roadmap down the road. Next steps, how will we share it? Well, Board of Education meeting we did on February 10th, and I believe there's a YouTube link that came through on newsletter if you would care to view that. The town hall meeting via Zoom, which is today. And understand we're going to be doing meetings March through May with different school and community groups, the PTSA, other community groups, Kiwanis may come into play, and then also with additional staff presentations with building councils, the district councils, faculty meetings, et cetera. So, you know, the district is coming up with this great plan. We want to make sure that every single stakeholder, parents, teachers, building staff, students, everybody understands what this vision is and how it's going to be accomplished.
So as I mentioned, the management plan kind of takes the strategic plan, that 5-year goals and subtopics and some general ways we might achieve those goals, and makes it really concrete and makes that playbook that we'll have on a year-to-year basis. And so that management plan is a pretty important document. And right now we're just on the fringe of starting that work. So through March to June, we'll engage with the leadership's team and the consultants from University of Rochester, as Dr. Terranova mentioned, to really finalize those people that are responsible within the district for the work and the facilitators for those year 1 tasks. The U of R consultants will meet with those folks to really unpack those tasks, to really make sure that it's crystal clear what that scope of work entails. The consultants will create that rough draft, feed it back to us for feedback, revisions, and then that work will start in July. So we're really looking forward to having this playbook, the management plan, so that we can really start to bring the strategic plan to life.
So thank you very much, Karen, Kira, and Andy, for that quick but very thorough presentation. I just had a couple questions for you. First, I have to start with Kira. So I know you kind of talked about this a little bit in your part, which you were very, as Mrs. Finter said, very eloquent. What was it like to be a student? I think there was 8 of you, I believe, at different times on the committee. What was it like to be a student on the committee?
I loved it. I wrote about it a lot in my college applications. I think that it felt very good to finally have my voice heard. Recently, there was a segment of the Victor View, which is a student-run podcast that we see either once a week or once every 2 weeks. And the most recent segment was students interviewing other students, other members of the faculty, and eventually Mr. Siesto, the principal of the senior high school, saying, do Victor students get their voices heard? And there was a variety of answers. A lot of the student body feels as though they don't get their voices heard. But in that moment of being a part of the strategic planning committee and getting to advocate on behalf of students, and not just students that are like me, I have friends who are different students than myself. I know students who are different. Just getting to be there and be vocal about the needs of the student body as a whole really shows that you can get your voice heard when you make those steps. I was a member of the interviews, as I mentioned before, which was used as the qualitative data. And I talked for a long time about a lot of the things that Victor does really well. And I know that that was used in our strategic planning, because when you talk, people are going to listen. So I think that's one of the things that was so great, is that even though I am a student, I'm not a parent, I do not have a college degree, I don't even have a high school degree, I was still being listened to, my opinions and my thoughts were still being valued. And not only was that reassuring, but it was also uplifting, because even though I am graduating, there are this plan that I contributed to and that all of us contributed to is going to make a difference. And I'm happy that I can be able to make a difference.
You certainly did. You and your 7 counterparts were phenomenal. And I know that as each of the days that went, we went through 4 full days in addition to some other time afterwards. But it seemed like as each of the days went forward, the students were heard a little bit more and more because of what you said was so relevant. So greatly appreciate that, Kira. Andy, can you talk just a little bit about how either easy or difficult it was to take all that information and turn it into 3 main focus areas around culture, learning and achievement, student supports and opportunities?
Yeah, I think that the facilitators did a very good job of kind of, making that task more manageable. I think that, as participants in this process, seeing everything when we first got there, all of the qualitative and the quantitative data, it was a lot. And, once we were broken down into the 3 groups that focused on the different pillars, it became much more manageable. And, very literally through this process, we were using great big sheets of paper and markers, and we were checking things off and writing things down and crossing stuff off and modifying it. And so this was like a living, breathing document at all times. It was constantly changing. And, for me as a parent going through this process, what I think was definitely a sign that you wanted other folks to really take the reins was that, through this time, Tim was in my group where we focused on the student supports and whatnot. And that entire time that we, worked together, he did a lot more listening than directing and whatnot. He took everything in that we had to say and let us create what we were looking at from a vision standpoint. And I think that's impressive, from a leadership standpoint, to listen versus being heard. Oftentimes is a compliment. So it was very manageable, and it was very heartwarming to see that, district leadership, people from the Board of Ed, they wanted to listen more than they wanted to be heard.
Yeah, and Karen, thank you very much for that, Andy. Karen, what do you take out of the process itself? Kind of like one or two ahas, so to speak, from the 4 days you spent as a instructional leader during the planning?
Yeah, I think one of the big ahas, and this was actually even part of the conversation as the strategic plan group was going through and really culling through that data and developing the tasks, is that there is so much crossover, right? There's so many, when you look at the over 117, 120 some odd tasks, whatever that final number came to be, there is a lot of cross connections that can be made. So it's not just working in silos, but it really is working together in that same direction. So that, I think, is a really important, when you look at those task totals, it can get overwhelming, but there's so much work that supports one another and building to building, student to student. So I think that's important. The other piece was, it was really powerful to hear all of the different data sets. It wasn't just looking at numbers. It was looking at the perception data, doing some district to district comparisons. That was fascinating conversation. And that just sparked more conversation from our students, and really getting them to think about and ask questions. And I just thought that the amount of dialogue and the amount of conversation to enlist all stakeholders was so powerful. And that's what's going to contribute to make this plan that belongs to everybody, not just a single person.
Yeah, and then just in closing, I guess I'd ask each of you, what aspect of the plan maybe are you most proud of?
I'll go first. I think what I'm most proud of, there was one day where this was before we created those columns, was we were finishing up each of those points. And as I said previously, I was on the student wellness section. And I just remember presenting what our main goals were for student wellness. And then everyone just started clapping. And it was just like, wow, we were finally making that progress after reading all of that data, all of those pages, highlighting and annotating. And I just was like, wow, we're actually doing this. So what I'm looking most forward to and what I am most proud of is that student-based aspect, is that I really want to make a difference for my peers and for the culture of the school. That's what I'm most proud of, and I'm glad I got to contribute to that, whether that be mental health based or whether that be academic based.
Thank you, Kira.
Yeah, I think from my perspective, one of the things that was good to see was, throughout the process at the very beginning too, when we were looking at different data sets and different sets of feedback and whatnot, there were some folks that, they were feeling overwhelmed by it, like almost taking some of the stuff that they were seeing personally. And what was great to see was how, as we got further and further apart from that, and we started to understand why we were looking at some of the data sets that we were looking at. And once pen got to paper and ideas started flowing, that it all made sense. That, you know, just because this might be an area of opportunity for us today, it doesn't mean it can't be an area that's a strength here down the road. And you know, things that are a strength, what can we do to make them even better here within the district? You know, what I'm looking forward to the most, I think, you know, from my perspective is, and I took a keen interest in this, was the area on special education. You know, I'll be interested to see how the plan progresses over this time, and am excited to see that, you know, there are so many things that we definitely want to hit on in year one. I think that shows, again, a true willingness and dedication to the process and to those students that need that extra support.
Thank you, Andy.
Oh, real quick, before Karen goes, sorry, Karen.
No,
I
you're
just
fine.
want to say that I totally agree with Mr. Fuchs that the plan itself, when you hear that, you think that it's highlighting all the things that were going wrong, but it was also highlighting a lot of things that were going right and that Victor was doing right. And so, yes, we are making these changes. We have our plan, what we're doing year 1 through 5, but we also saw in all of those pages of notes and all of those conversations that Victor is doing a lot of things right. And we are on the path for so much greatness and so much success. So although we have much to work on, we are doing a lot of things so well. And I think that's still important to note. And we've all talked about that, but Mr. Fuchs just mentioned it, and I wanted to highlight that as well.
And from my perspective, I think one of the things that I appreciate most about the plan is that there are goals, but the plan doesn't dictate the vision for carrying out some of those goals, right? It gives enough space for the work to happen in the way that best meets the needs of the students in the community of Victor. And so whether it's in terms of developing a professional development plan or a guaranteed and viable curriculum, it doesn't prescribe we're going to use this resource and this time and you know, to limit the possibilities. It really leaves it open for the work to be reflective of the needs of the community, which I think is a strong asset of the plan.
Thanks, Karen. Well, I just want to thank all of you, not only for the tremendous work you did in creating the plan along with the entire strategic planning group, but certainly for the time tonight. Kiera, you are headed for great things. You're a senior. I know you already got into Binghamton, which is a great school, and you have some other opportunities. So whatever you choose to do, I know you're going to be highly successful, and you will always have a piece of Victor here because you've contributed to this plan. And certainly I hope that you don't go too far away, to be honest with you, but come back all the time. And Andy, I know you have a great kid who's a senior right now, but certainly want you to stay involved and enjoy your child's senior year, but then keep coming back and helping us because our parent input on this committee, you know, we talked a lot about the kids, but we had tremendous parent input that we could not have done this without them. So because of their expertise and their understanding of their children and what their children need in a school district. So thank you, Andy, for all of that. Karen, obviously your leadership was greatly appreciated by me and it continues to be. I know that many of our leadership staff and our teachers and staff were on the committee. And really it made a huge difference in supporting it. And I, like Kiera said much more eloquently than me, I think everybody kind of meshed together. We also had Karen Ballard and Kristen Elliott, 2 of our outstanding Board of Education members on the committee, which was really, really important so that they could participate in that and add their input, and then certainly broadcast and communicate the efforts back to the Board of Education, which is in full support of this. So thanks, everybody. Really appreciate it. I'm going to stay on for a few minutes. I want to give you a couple highlights and updates. But Andy and Kiera and Karen, thank you so much. Appreciate you coming on, and take care of yourselves. And we'll continue to do some of these across the community. So appreciate it. So as Andy and Kira and Karen take their leave, first of all, again, thank you to all three of them. They did a great job. I do want to give you, for those of you that are sticking around, I want to give you a couple updates. First and foremost, actually not foremost, but first, I just want to give you a quick update on COVID. I talked a little bit about it at the Board of Education meeting last week. Tonight, as of tonight, we have 9 positive student cases and 2 positive staff cases. So we're at a total of 11. We've been hovering around somewhere between 7 and 11 or 12 cases over the last week, which is phenomenal in terms of the numbers compared to what we used to be. So obviously our cases have significantly decreased. Talked a little bit about really advocating with our state government as well as our governor to give us an exit strategy around some of the mandates, whether it's masking or some other mandates that we currently have in place. I know the governor is supposed to make a decision on the mask mandate in early March. From what I heard, she wants to see how February break goes and then how we react after that. But she will have supposedly input on her mandate again, like I said, right around early March. And as soon as we get that input, we will, the board and I will talk about next steps. We're certainly going to include and listen to the experts among us, whether it's the Ontario County Public Health Department, certainly our school physician and the New York State Department of Health. But we're really looking for a way to, again, have that exit strategy in order to really start to move back towards a normal type of schooling that people are used to as we deal with this very serious pandemic. But the great news is our cases are very low, and I certainly, along with all others, hope that it stays low. A little update, we are in the middle of our budget process right now at Victor Central School. So this Thursday in the ECS boardroom, we have a second budget workshop. Our first was in January. This will be this Thursday at 7 p.m. You're welcome to come and join us. It's not a regular board meeting, but it is a budget workshop. So the public is welcome to attend and watch. There's no public comment during this particular, during workshops. But like I said, you can either attend if you'd like or watch it, I believe, via live stream, which is really important. So this Thursday, 7 p.m., we're going to do a budget presentation. This time, we're going to be really focused on personnel and staffing. And how that how our financial resources are impacting our ability to hopefully increase staffing in certain critical areas. You know, you've heard me say and many others that for a long time, Victor has been understaffed compared to its peers and the needs of a district that has over 4,000 students. There's many areas where it is still understaffed, and we're going to continue to work on those areas. And that's the good news, is we believe we have the financial structure at this point to help at least alleviate some of that. And over a 2 to 3 year period, really alleviate as much as possible, if not all of it. So we're going to talk more about that on Thursday and continue. It's just part of the process. Remember, we don't finalize our budget recommendation to the board till early April, end of March. And then the board hopefully adopts the budget at the April Board of Education meeting, and then we move forward with publicizing and communicating the budget before the vote in May. Certainly at that time, we also, individuals are able to run for the Board of Education. We'll talk more about that and those opportunities as well in the future. So budget workshop Thursday night at 7 o'clock. And then just for closing, just for a couple minutes, I want to, as I always do, give a few shout out and plugs. There's so many that I just tried to pick a few, but again, these are examples of all the great things that are happening at Victor. For example, the Early Childhood School celebrated 100 days of learning today. That's a big celebration in the ECS. That's our pre-K, kindergarten, and first graders. They stacked 100 cups. They sorted tens of treats and trinkets. They read special books, made class crowns, and did so many different learning and fun activities tied to the 100 days of school, which was fantastic today. So I really appreciate their work and the staff and the teachers' work around that. And again, it goes right with the old mathematics and other critical learning areas for our youngest learners. But they did love their 100-day celebration. I mentioned this a couple times in previous at the Board of Ed meeting, as well as I believe in my community update. Channel 8 Golden Apple Award winner went to another Victor teacher, Brian Kavanaugh, recently. He's an outstanding teacher at the Victor Junior High School. He was actually nominated by a student, which was awesome. But again, we've had multiple Golden Apple Award winners, and it really signifies a staff member or teacher who makes a difference. And of course, all of our staff do that, but this is an example. Brian is another example of somebody who makes a difference every day with our kids. Great teacher, great connections with kids, really gets it in terms of understanding how to meet the needs of kids and support them and build those strong relationships. So really proud of Brian for being the Channel 8 Golden Apple Award winner. Victor Primary, they take, again, they're another example of taking every type of experience and activity and real life experience and turn it into a learning piece. So they had the Super Bowl, SOUP, Super Bowl Community Service Project, which was a huge win for Victor. So thanks to the generosity of the VPS community, the Victor Farmington Food Cupboard, which is an amazing organization that helps our families, will be the recipient of 1,422 food items. Now, the goal of the primary school for the Super Bowl service project was 500 items, so they greatly exceeded their goal, and a great effort by our primary school to, again, end up being able to provide 1,422 food items to our amazing Victor Farmington Food Cupboard, who does a great job in our community. So thanks to Victor Primary. And also tied to Victor Primary, I want to do a shout out to Sarah Chilson, who is the, I might mess up the title, but basically she's the executive director of The Spot. Now, The Spot has for years provided free school supplies, clothing, food, and shoes to students in the Canandaigua Central School District. Thanks to the collaboration of our administration at the primary building, Amanda Moon and definitely Heidi Robb, who also has connections at the Canandaigua School District before she came here. Thanks to Heidi and Amanda's leadership, and certainly Sarah's leadership, we're able to now bring The Spot to Victor Primary. So we had a grand opening this week, Monday actually, and now we're able to provide supplies, clothing, food, shoes, backpacks, you name it. It's amazing. We have that resource where staff members can just go to the Spot location in Victor Primary and provide students with what they need when they need it. There's no, big deal about it. We don't have to write permission or anything like that. It's just an easy process that really preserves the child's dignity and gets the kids what they need when they don't have it. So big thank you to Sarah and Amanda and Heidi for bringing, and others who participated, to bringing The Spot to Victor Primary. We're definitely doing this and then looking at ways to expand it similar to the Canandaigua School District across our buildings in Victor. And then last but not least, a big shout out to the amazing Victor Winter Guard. I was able to watch our Winter Guard presentation, actually competition. This was Saturday night. Our Winter Guard's been around for a long time and they're basically world renowned, but they had they have competitions every week, but this was the week we had the competition at Victor Senior High School. Again, it was Saturday night. 14 school districts contributed or participated in the competition. It was called Images in Motion Home Show. And if you're not familiar with a Winter Guard, they do an amazing performance where a group of students dance and then spin, as well as catch flags, wooden rifles, pretend sabers. Again, they're wooden rifles, not real ones. But it's an amazing display of athletic ability and just performance in terms of performing arts, what between dancing, then the ability to throw and catch the flags, and especially the rifles. And to watch all of these schools practice so hard to be able to do routines like this is just amazing. So It's an incredibly challenging competition. Again, 14 school districts participated. Our Victor Senior High Winter Guard won their class, won first place in their class. And then our youngest Winter Guard, which we call the cadets, which I believe are 5th through 7th graders, they also won their competition. So the future looks bright for the Victor Winter Guard, and really appreciate their work. And I know we have a special VIPE competition and presentation in March, which I'm really excited about, which is another part of our whole music and performing arts focus here at Victor Central School District. So that's really the updates I have right now. I do want to, if hopefully still listening, if you have questions or comments, please put them on our Facebook Live page, right on this presentation, right on this town hall. I'll try to get to your questions if you have any as soon as possible. This was really an amazing presentation, the first 30 minutes. If you get a chance, please, if you didn't hear it, please listen to the presenters talk about our strategic plan. We'll have much more information on how we carry out this plan and really emphasize the work that needs to be done to continue to celebrate our successes, but also improve based upon a growth mindset focus in the Vector Central School District. So we're constantly improving and doing the best we can. Last but not least, by the way, I just got a note from the legendary Mr. Isaacs, who helps me on these. I almost forgot this. I can't believe it. Wait a minute, Mr. Isaacs, you got to flash those dates one more time. We've got the Victor Senior High Musical. I think it's the 10th, 11th, and 12th of March. I believe so. I'm sorry, my fault. Well, Mr. Isaacs, is it? Yeah, it's 10th, 11th, and 12th. Thank you. The Senior High Musical is an amazing thing. It's one of the best musicals in the entire state in terms of high school musicals. March 10th, 11th, and 12th. You'll hear much more about it as we move closer, but they have some fantastic, it's going to be a fantastic performance. I can't wait. So don't forget the Victor Senior High School Musical this March. Next time, we're going to do a bit more on the budget, talk a little bit more and around the budget process and what we're working on. Probably, definitely, I would say have some special guests on and just talk more about what's going on at Victor Central School District. Really appreciate your time. Please reach out to me if you have any questions or concerns or comments, and have a wonderful rest of the week. Don't forget, this is the rest of the end of this week. We move into February break. So our students have next week off for February break. And I know they're extremely excited, and so is our staff. So don't forget about February break next week. Have a great night and take care.